Hey everybody, my name is Miss Ava Hart and I am your professional instructor for the 2020-2021 school year. So what up, Doe? How you doing? All right. I'm going to d divide my introductory video or my introduction video into two parts. It's going to be educational and it's going to be personal. So this is the educational part, so you can get a background of my credentials, where have I taught, and my experience as a teacher. So I attended Wayne State University and Eastern Michigan University for my undergraduate studies. I graduated from Eastern Michigan University in 1998, in December of 1998. I had a double major of secondary education and English language and literature, and I have a minor in history. Now, I would have had a double minor in history and African American studies, but at the time at Eastern Michigan University, African American studies was not an approved teaching minor. So once I realized that, I was like two classes short of having a minor in African American studies. And I should have just went ahead and took those two classes. But once I realized that, I was really close to graduation. So I was ready to graduate, so I didn't finish those two classes. So I graduated from Eastern Michigan University in December of 1998 with a double major of secondary education and English language and literature with a minor in history. And I graduated cum laude, which means that I graduated with honors. By the time I hit my senior year, every semester I was on the dean's list. Every semester I was on the dean's list. So, um, yes, I graduated with honors in December of 1998. So I did my student teaching at Murray Wright High School. Murray Wright no longer exists. It is now Frederick Douglass Male Academy, which is a Detroit Public Schools Community District school. But before it was Frederick Douglass, it was Murray Wright. And that's where I did my student teaching. Now, my first teaching experience with student teaching was with seniors. My mentor teacher was a senior English teacher, and so I was placed with him. So my first experience was with seniors. So after I finished student teaching and after I graduated from Eastern Michigan University in 1998, I was not a certified teacher. I did not have my teaching license because I had failed my first attempt at my minor certification test. I passed my major certification test, which was English language and literature. I passed that with flying colors. My minor certification test, I failed it the first time I took it. I missed it by 5 points. So I could not solidify a teaching position because technically I wasn't a certified teacher. So I had to sub. So I was a substitute teacher with Detroit Public Schools at Western International High School. And I was there until I was able to pass my minor certification test, which I did in the spring of 1999. Um, but by the time I passed my certification test, school was over with. So I was hired as a substitute teacher. Excuse me, I was hired as a teacher for summer school. I was able to do summer school. So I did summer school at Western in the summer of 1999. Um, and don't ask me why to this day. I have no idea why I chose Norfolk, Virginia to start my teaching career. And this was in 1999. I picked Norfolk, Virginia. Um, I contacted the HR department. I had an interview and I was hired. I accepted the position. And in September of 1999, I relocated to Norfolk, Virginia, and I was a teacher. I began my teaching career at Maury High School. Maury, Maury High School. Um, so in the English department at Maury High School, there were only two black English teachers. It was myself and another lady, another teacher named Miss Conley. She was from Ohio. So Maury High School was a diverse high school, and it was a prominent high school. It was a very um, elite high school, if you want to call it that. And it was a diverse population, but it was predominantly white. But they the white students were outnumbered the other races, but it was still diverse. So it was a predominantly white high school. I was hired to teach ninth grade, and how it's set up, how it was set up then was that you had different levels or different tiers of English classes. You had your remedial, you had your regular, you had your honors, and you had your AP. So this was my first time in my professional life because I went to a PWI, Wayne State University, and Eastern Michigan University are what we call PWIs, predominantly white institutions. So I already knew about racism. I had already encountered racism attending those schools. But to encounter racism in my professional life, in my educational career was quite different. So obviously, um, unfortunately, but obviously, the remedial English classes were filled with black students. And my ninth grade remedial English class was all black. So, no, I was feeling some kind of way because remember, I minored in African American studies at Eastern Michigan University. When I was at Eastern Michigan University, I was known as the poet, and I was known as Angela Davis reincarnated. I was black on black. I was black on purpose. I was extra black. So, and at Wayne State University, for the 2 years that I attended Wayne State University, I belonged to the NAACP chapter at Wayne State University, and it was because of us that Wayne State University to this day honors Dr. King's birthday. Because when I was attending Wayne State, they did not observe Dr. King's birthday. Like you went to class, and it was, it was no it classes were not canceled on Dr. King's birthday when I attended there. And we was like, what's up with that? Like the campus just went on as usual. So we held a whole protest. Um, and at the time, Wayne State did not look like how it looks now. It didn't have, the campus looked nothing like it looks now. So there were no dorms and none of that. So there was what we call the Student Center building. That's still there, where everybody hung out in between classes. And it was a few restaurants in there, and there was a student store in there, and it was like the hangout spot. So what we did was we communicated to everybody, don't go to the student center. On Martin Luther King's the day that we observed Dr. King's birthday, we were like, don't go to the student center. Don't buy anything from there. Don't sit in there. Don't watch TV. Don't hang out in there. Don't do anything in the student center building. And I recall that moment as if it was yesterday. The Student Center building was empty that day. Empty. Not one soul went into the Student Center building. And we provided brown bag lunches. So if you were accustomed to going into the student center building and getting, going to one of the restaurants and getting something to eat, the NAACP provided lunches. Um, and the university lost a lot of money that day. That's why when I look at protests that if you ain't hitting white people in their pockets, they not listening to you. It doesn't. You can scream Black Lives Matter all you want, but if it's not hitting, affecting their bottom line, they don't care. They just looking at you like whatever. And I learned that lesson as an undergraduate at Wayne State University when we held that protest. Because in that one day where nobody frequented the student center building and bought nothing, the university lost a lot of money. Because besides the bookstore, that was the only place on campus that the university made extra money from students. And not one person spent money in the student center building that day. And do you know, the very next day, the president of Wayne State University, Dr. David Adamati, he's no longer alive, he contacted the president of the NAACP Wayne State chapter and was like, we need you to come in and sit down and we need to negotiate. And I remember sitting down at this huge oval table with the president of Wayne State University and the president of the Wayne State NAACP chapter. His name was Corey Kennard. And we sat down with the other advisors connected to Dr. David Adamati. And it was like, okay, what y'all want? So I know about I know about engaging in a protest where you get change because I lived it. Like I lived it. I lived it. And I know about racism and I know um how how to get what you want when you're affected by racism, because that moment will forever stay with me. And it is because when of the NAACP at that time, it had to be like in 93, 90. It had to be like in um maybe like 93, 94. It is because of us, the NAACP chapter Wayne State University, that Wayne State observes Dr. King's holiday. So when you hit white people in their pockets and money, oh, they'll listen to you. Because we were sitting at the table the very next day. Like we're talking about the president of a university cleared his schedule for some black kids, some black college kids, and was like, what y'all want? Because y'all can't be messing with our money. We can't have the student center shut down for another day. What y'all want? So I said that to let you know that I'm very familiar with racism. Um, and I'm very adamant, and I'm very adamant. My purpose of why I'm here is for Black people. So when I'm in Norfolk, Virginia at the time in 1999, and I'm seeing like, why you putting the Black kids in this remedial class? Like, it doesn't sit right with me, because here I just told you about my experiences with racism and how I affected change. I collaborated with other Black people and we changed things. I'm looking like, nah, like, oh, why is my remedial English class filled with Black kids? Because they're not dumb. Is it because these white teachers don't know how to deal with Black kids? Like, what's up with this? Like, you don't know how to, interact with us? Like, what's up? What's up? So when I saw that, I was just like, mm-mm, not in this lifetime. And and Norfolk, Virginia just wasn't a good fit for me. I mean, I'm Detroit. I'm Detroit. Um, and Norfolk, Virginia was it's a lot slower than Detroit, as far as the pace of life, and I'm just a Detroit girl. So I was just like, okay, this is not a good fit. And so I finished one semester at Maury High School. I left after the first semester. Once Christmas break hit, I packed my bags up and I was gone. Um, but I will say this. Working at Maury High School set the standard for me of how I taught moving forward because I had to bring my A game. Because remember, it's only two black teachers in the English department, and it's all white women. So they're already looking at us like, you know, you're really not qualified to teach us or our children. You qualified to teach the black kids, but not really our children. So it was always a sense of me having to prove my credentials, to prove my certification. And what people don't know, if you're not in education, you don't know. The state of Michigan is one of the hardest states to get a teaching license in. That's why we're able to have reciprocity with so many other states, because in order to get a teaching license in Michigan, is so many tests that you have to take in order to say that you have a teaching license in Michigan. That's why I didn't have to take any tests um, in Virginia to get their teaching license. I think I would have had to eventually, but my teaching license held so much weight that I was able to start teaching with my teaching license in Michigan, because it's so difficult to get certified in Michigan as a teacher. So here I am in Norfolk, Virginia with these white women in the English department, and they looking at me like, you gotta basically prove yourself, and I'm looking like I come from a whole state where if you got a teaching license, trust me, you don't have to go through the fire for it. And I went to a teaching school, a teaching university. I graduated from a teaching university. Eastern Michigan is known for its teaching program, and Eastern Michigan's teaching program ain't no joke. So it was a slap in my face, and it was an insult, because you think because you white, I'm not qualified to teach your white kids, but I'm qualified to teach the black kids. Oh, your degree is good enough for the black kids, but it really ain't good enough for us. And I felt like I was always challenged. So I was like, nah, I ain't about this life. So I completed one semester, and in January of 2020, I came on back to Detroit. And at that time, there was an opening at Murray Wright High School, the same high school I did my student teaching at. So I ended up being hired at Murray Wright High School, and I stayed at Murray Wright High School from February of 2020 until June of 2007, until it closed. So I began my teaching career in 1999 at Norfolk, Virginia, but I didn't officially start my teaching experience with Detroit Public Schools until February of 2020. But like I said, uh, Maury High School really made me bring my A game, because I was always in a constant state of proving myself, proving myself, and I couldn't slack. Like I couldn't slack, because that's what they was waiting for me to do. They was waiting to catch me slipping. So I always had to come and bring my A game. So that experience set the foundation for me. Like, I don't know what slacking is when it comes to teaching. I don't know what it is to slack. And even on my days where I call myself being lazy, I'm still batting 1,000. I'm still coming hard in the paint in the classroom. Even when I think that I'm being lazy, because that is how I started my teaching career, in that type of environment. So, um, so after in 2007, Detroit went through this massive upheaval. Schools were closing left and right because student enrollment was decreasing. Um, They were just closing schools. We didn't have a school board. We didn't have a superintendent. So like every year, every 6 months, it was somebody new running Detroit Public Schools. So in 2007, the fall of 2007, I went to Cleveland Intermediate High School. That was the first time I was ever in a setting where it was a kindergarten through no, excuse me. It was a 6th through 12th grade school. So you had middle school and high school all in the same building. But I was in the high school part. I was teaching seniors, but because of low student enrollment, I was transferred to a middle school. I was only at Cleveland Intermediate High School until first count, which is in October. Then I was transferred to a high school because there was low enrollment. Um, and I can't even remember the name of the middle school that I went to because I was quickly out of there. I realized that even though I'm certified to teach middle school, I was like, I don't like middle school because I couldn't wrap my head around the concept of why are you having children stand in line? I mean, you're having 12, 13-year olds stand in line to go to the bathroom. Like somebody got to walk you in a straight line, fingers on your on over your lip, quiet, arms folded, and I got to walk you to the cafeteria. I got to walk you to the bathroom. I got to walk you to your next class. Because, mind you, this was my first time in a middle school. All my teaching experience have been in high school. So I'm not, in high school, when the bell rings, you get up, you go to your locker, you go to your next class. I don't have to take you to the bathroom. I don't have to take you to the cafeteria. So I'm like, what is this about? Like, y'all okay with this? And that was another issue because I'm like, don't y'all see the prison to pipeline mentality here? Like, you're getting in line to go to the bathroom, you're getting in line to go to the cafeteria. Like, don't they do that in prison? And you're already being acclimated subconsciously for that life? Like, no, that's not okay. That's not okay. Like, I was not okay with that. Like when you go home, your mother is not making you stand in line to go to the bathroom. And nobody was questioning this. And we were justifying that it was okay to do this to our children that look like me, melanated kids. Like, nah. When I knew that if I went outside of Detroit, I wouldn't have this experience. So I was like, no, no, I ain't about this life. So um it, it's funny how the ancestors and God provides you a way of escape. Because I was able to, it was a way of escape for me to get about that situation. And I ended up going to Persian High School in 2007. No, I'm sorry. In 2000, no, I wasn't. It was in January 2008. I was able to transfer to Persian High School. In January of 2008, I was able to transfer. So I stayed at the middle school for like a semester for the rest of the fall semester of 2007, and then I transferred to Persian High School in 2008, January of 2008. So I was there. I was a yearbook teacher. Um, I had never touched a yearbook in my life, and they did not have a yearbook teacher, and their yearbook was due in 4 months. And I didn't know any of the kids. They didn't know me, but they were looking for me to produce a yearbook for them by June of 2008, and I got it done. So I was at Pershing from January of 2008 until June of 2009. I was an English teacher there and I was a yearbook teacher there. So I did 2 yearbooks for Pershing, 2008 and 2009. And then in 2009, the principal, she was transferred to King because remember, DPS is still going through this, switching principals to different schools and closing down schools and all of that. So in 2009, in June of 2009, the principal of Pershing was transferred to King. And um, I was like, no, I'm not going to King. I was like, I'm not going to King. And I'm not really big on following people. Like I was just like, nah. Um, I said, and I wasn't staying at Pershing because the principal that replaced the principal that was coming in, I had worked with her at Cleveland Intermediate High School, and we bumped heads. And I was like, nah, I definitely ain't working with her. And I'm sure she was saying the same thing about me. I definitely don't want her. So the feeling was mutual. It wasn't personal. I'm like, we both felt the same way about each other, and that's cool. I'm okay with that. Because it's never personal. Sometimes you just don't mesh. Personalities just don't mesh. It's all right. Um, so I was just like, oh well, I just wherever the chips fall, that's where I'll be in the fall of 2009. Well, I had a plug. I didn't even know I had a plug. A social studies teacher that I worked with in Murray High School, he actually knew the principal at Cooley High School. So at the time, Cooley did have a reputation of being like off the chain. Um, and he was like, go and talk to him. He has a position available for you. Um, I didn't even have to interview because ironically, the principal at Cooley at the time, he and I went to Wayne State together when I did my master's at Wayne State. We were in class together, so we already knew each other. He knew my work ethic as a student, and he was really good friends with the social studies teacher that I worked with at Murray Wright. So the social studies teacher could vouch for my work ethic at Murray Wright. So it wasn't even about an interview. It was just about, hey, like, look, we got this position. Like, I know you don't heard stuff about Cooley, but we really need to fill this position, and I know you could do it. Your track record speaks for itself, and blah blah blah. So I was like, okay, I took it. And I loved Cooley. And I was so disappointed that it closed in June of 2010. I was so disappointed. Um, but they closed Cooley in 2010. I didn't teach English at Cooley. I was the creative writing teacher and I was the yearbook teacher. So I had 3 yearbooks, actually 4, but at the time I had 3 yearbooks under my belt. So I did that, and then they closed Cooley down in 2010. So it was just like, dang, I can't win for losing. Like every school, I just keep moving it and moving it. Either change the principal or they close the school, or it was just like, oh my goodness. So in the fall of 2010, I had another plug. A teacher that I worked with, a math teacher that I worked with at Murray Wright, he ended up becoming a principal at this alternative school that was located inside Kettering. Now, obviously, Kettering doesn't exist anymore. They tore it down and they built East English Village. But at the time, it was an alternative school housed within Kettering. So I was like, okay, I'll go over there with you. No. And it was not the school, it was not the students. I knew that I was done. I was like, I'm done. Because from the year 2000 to the year 2010, I had worked at 7 different schools. So 7 different schools. So I had at that time put in 10 years with Detroit Public Schools, and I was at 7 different schools. I said, this ain't right. This ain't okay. Um, and I just started evaluating my life. I started questioning my life, like, you know, what are you really doing, Deandra? What you really doing with your life? Um, by that time, I had already had my master's degree. I got my master's degree in 2003 from Wayne State University, and I had finished my AS specialist from Wayne State University in 2009. Um, And my master's degree and my ed specialist degree is in educational leadership and policy studies, which means that I could be a principal if I wanted to, because I have the education to be a principal. I just didn't have the experience in leadership to be a principal, but I definitely have the education. And I graduated with both degrees. Well, the educational specialist is a certificate, and the master's is obviously a degree. But I graduated both programs with honors. So I knew my stuff. But here I am in 2010 already looking at my 10 years of teaching, and I've been to 10 different schools and actually worked in 2 different states. Um, so I had experience not only in Michigan, but outside of Michigan. And you don't find too many teachers currently in Detroit Public Schools that can say that. Most people, their experience is just in Michigan. Like I have experience in Norfolk, Virginia, in teaching in Norfolk, Virginia. I have experience in teaching in Atlanta, Georgia. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia from 2013 to 2015. And while I was there, I worked for a Black-owned tutoring company who had a contract with Atlanta Public Schools. And I tutored students in grades 3 through 5 using iReady. So, like, my teaching experience and my resume is not just contained in the state of Michigan. I mean, I got Virginia, I have Atlanta. I've taught um when I finally decided to leave in 2010, when I was at that alternative school and that was housed in Kettering, and I was like, enough is enough. So I stayed there for like a month, and then I resigned from Detroit Public Schools um in 2010, and I didn't come back until 2017. But in between that time, I worked as a teacher's assistant in a pre-K, not a pre-K, a kindergarten first grade setting. So I have literally taught every grade from kindergarten, I mean, yes, from kindergarten to 12th grade. So my teaching experience is vast, and it's in different states. It's not just contained to Michigan, and it's in different settings. I've worked in charter schools, I've worked in public schools, and I've worked in a private school where you got to pay tuition. That was the kindergarten first grade experience. So I didn't have the kindergarten first grade experience, and I didn't have the teaching in Atlanta experience until after I resigned from Detroit Public Schools in 2010. But even before that, I had the credentials. I mean, I'm graduating from undergraduate and graduate schools with honors. Like, I'm not seeing less than a 3.0. Um, then I have out of state teaching experience. So, I'm sitting here in 2010, like, I'm that deal. And it's not bragging, it's just facts. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, really, what am I doing with my life? So, once I left in 2010, um, I'll explain to you what I did during that time. But I came back to Detroit Public Schools in 2017. In January 2017, I was a substitute teacher because I had let my teaching license lapse. In Michigan, I had reciprocity in Georgia because I had applied for a teaching license in Georgia, and I was granted that. So I could teach in Georgia. I had a teaching license in Georgia, but my Michigan certification had lapsed. So I needed to renew it, which means I had to go back to school. I went to Wayne County Community College. I had to take 2 classes in order to renew my teaching license. And in between time, I was a substitute teacher at Cody DIT. This was in January of 2017. I taught history to ninth graders. at Cody DIT, because at that time Cody was divided into three schools, and I was assigned to the DIT portion. So in January 2017, I taught at Cody and I taught history until I was able to renew my teaching license and my certification. And then so from January of 2017 to June of 2018, I was at Cody DIT. And then in September of 2018 until June of 2019, I was at Cody because they just made Cody into one school. And then after that, in September of 2019 until June of 2020, which brings us now, I was at Mumford High School. So I've been all over the place. Like that's just been my journey. I don't regret any of it. I don't regret anything that I've said, that I've done during that time, during that experience. It all made me a better person, but it also built up my resume. It also built up my credentials because I've taught now in three different states. I have reciprocity. I can teach. I have teaching licenses in three different states. Um, I've taught every single grade level from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, and not too many teachers can say that. Not too many and at least not in Detroit Public Schools can say that. I've taught creative writing. I've taught journalism. When I was at Murray Wright High School, at the time the school newspaper was published through the Detroit Free Press. It would come out every month in the actual Detroit Free Press. So if you went and bought the Detroit Free Press when the school newspaper came out, you actually saw the high school edition. And I was the journalism advisor at Murray Wright High School. Um, and we were winning awards. I have students to this day who said it was because of being a part of the journalism program that they are now journalists, um, or it sparked in them their love of writing. Obviously, like I said, I've done, what is it? I've done four yearbooks now. I did two for Pershing, one for Cooley. I did the very last yearbook for Cooley High School before it closed. And then I did a yearbook for, I did the very last yearbook for Cody DIT before Cody DIT closed. So I got four yearbooks under my belt. Um, so I'm like, the credentials is long. Like I am that deal. And I say that because I can say that because I've experienced this journey as a teacher. Like I've garnered so many skills and so much experience in different states, in different settings, in different grade levels. Like, so I know how to teach the little kids to the middle school kids, even though the organization and the structure of middle school, I'm not, I don't rock with, but I can still teach, a 12, 13-year old. So I stand before you highly qualified. Like you're not in somebody's classroom who is a dummy and who this is their first time, excuse me, around the block. No, this is, I can't even tell you how many times it is for me around the block. Um, so you're standing in front of someone who is highly qualified to teach you. Highly qualified. And so when I left in 2010, I published three books because that's what I wanted to do. I was just like, my mind could not keep going, could not keep comprehending the closing of the schools and the moving of the principals and me being in the middle of all of this madness. So you could say that when I resigned from Detroit Public Schools in 2010, it was like I was on a journey to do what I wanted to do. Maybe you could even say I was on a journey to find myself. and why, and really understand why I'm here and what I'm supposed to be doing while I'm here. So I knew that I always wanted to publish books. I knew I was a writer. I won my very first award, essay award, the Motown Museum. The essay, it was in 11th grade, and the essay topic was how do we make the world a better place. And my English teacher at the time, I graduated from Cass Tech High School. My English teacher at the time, my 11th grade English teacher, was Miss Wheeler, and she encouraged me to enter the contest, and I did, and I won second place. My essay won second place. um I wrote my very first book in third grade for Miss Edwards' class. She was my third grade teacher, and it was entitled The Three Wishes. So I knew I was a writer. I knew somewhere along the way I was going to write books because I was receiving too much confirmation along the way. In high school, I was on the journalism staff. I wrote for our school newspaper, The Cast Technician. In college, I wrote editorials for the Eastern Echo, which was the student newspaper for Eastern Michigan University. I wrote editorials. We had other small publications, other small newspapers at Eastern Michigan University. One of them was the Multicultural Times. My poetry was featured in that publication. So I knew that I was going to be a writer. And it was no coincidence that, I was hired to do 4 yearbooks in my teaching career, because it was just it was just one of the many things that I was supposed to do while I'm on this earth, which was to write. So when I left in 2010, that's what I did. I wrote 3 books, and they're on Amazon.com. Here they are. This one is If I Only Had 5 Minutes, The Last Will and Testament of a Hip Hop Poet. All my books are poetry, and all the poems in here are inspired by hip hop. I am a hip hop head. And I'm not talking about the music that's out now, because the music that's out now is garbage to me. I'm not into the genre of trap music and hip hop. It's garbage to me. They don't tell stories. They just talk about stuff that doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even have a theme. And a lot of them don't even know how to use figurative language. And we'll talk about that as the semester goes. Like a lot of the music is garbage to me. Out now, the rap music is out now is just garbage to me. Like, it's just like, what are you talking about? It's not, you're not even telling a story. Like, what, you just talking about random stuff. But this one is inspired, the poetry is all inspired by hip hop. Then I wrote RSVP, How a Detroit Girl Made Love's A-List. This is my autobiography. I wrote my autobiography using poetry and prose. So I tell the story of my life in the form of poetry. And then The Color of My Aunt's Coffee. I describe this one as if I was a rapper, because the poems in here remind me if I was a rapper. This is the bars that I would spit if I was a rapper. And all of these books are available on Amazon.com and Barnes and Noble. So that's what I did when I left. When I resigned from Detroit Public Schools in 2010, I was like, I'm gonna write my books, and that's what I did. Well, I had only intended to write 1 book, and I was like, wow, I had 3 books in me. I had 3 books worth of poetry, and didn't even realize it. I was only aiming for 1, and I did 3. So you're being taught by a whole author, like an entire author, a person who's taught in 2 different states. Well, actually 3 if you include Michigan. Um, at least 20 plus years of teaching experience. I've taught every grade level. So you're not being taught by a dummy. You're not being taught by somebody who does not have the experience of teaching. That's who I am as far as my introduction on the educational level. So that's it for this video. The next video, I'm going to tell you who I am on a personal level, because I'm very adamant about, you need to know who you're dealing with in life. whether it's on this platform, um, as far as teacher student, or if you're in a relationship, whether it's employer, employee, you need to know who you're dealing with. And I'm going to let you know who you're dealing with. So now you know who you're dealing with on the educational level, that you see that I am highly qualified to teach you. That is just, you're not dealing with no wet behind the ears first year teacher straight out of college. Because even when I was straight out of college, I was running it. Like, even my mentor teacher was impressed. Like, he was impressed. So that's it for this video. There will be questions attached to this video, so you will have to watch it in order to answer the questions. So part 2 is the personal introduction of who I am. All right.